This year's Our Fantasy prompts have actually, at this stage in the game, turned out really well for me. Suspiciously well, some might say. But at the moment, I am, if anything, overconfident. That said, I have 25 books that I am genuinely really excited about all of them. So let's jump over to the bingo board and I will tell you what my plans are. Today I'm going to be going through all of the books in my TBR, so obviously I don't necessarily know everything about them. I have done as much research as I could, and I do genuinely think they all fill easy mode and quite a lot of them fill hard mode. I will tell you my thinking, but if there's any where it sounds like you maybe don't agree with me, then do go off and do your own research if you want to borrow any of these ideas. That said, I will be putting out a video maybe next week, maybe the week after, of recommendations, books that I have already read where I thought they were, you know, fantastic stories, 4 and 5 stars, that specifically hit the prompts as they come. For those, I will be able to tell you a lot more about whether it does fit easy mode or hard mode, and obviously I'll be able to tell you that I genuinely think it's a great book. These I have the highest hopes for, but we have to see how they go. If you want to subscribe to the channel, this would be a perfect time to do it. Today we're just going to do my personal TBR and see what you think. So the first prompt is to read a book that features a trans or non-binary protagonist, and the hard mode is to have that occur in a non-modern setting. For me, the book that I've picked for this is The Sapling Tree by Margaret Killjoy. This is the first book in the Daughters of the Empty Throne series, and this is one that actually was an Our Fantasy recommendation. This isn't one that I had heard of before the bingo prompts dropped, although I think it has been a book club book before because I did vaguely recognise it from when I sort of pre-looked into the book club options, but this one sounds really, really up my alley. I kind of am surprised that I'd never heard of it before. The blurb describes it as a tale of earth magic, power struggle and self-invention in an own voices story of trans witchcraft. This sounds like it's going to have elements of political fantasy and witch covens tied together. We're going to have some protagonist in disguise moments, and it sounds like just a genuinely fast-paced, enjoyable fantasy. Going along the top row, the next prompt is to judge a book by its title. Hard mode is to dive in without reading any of the blurb or the summaries. The one that I'm picking up for this is The Scarlet Alchemist by Kylie Lee Baker. Obviously I don't know anything about it to tell you, but Alchemist just sounds like something I'm gonna have a good time with. It didn't say we couldn't look at the cover, and the cover is really stunning and looks like exactly the kind of really immersive fantasy that I'm personally gonna love. Then the third square is translated, and this is a book that has been translated from a language you don't speak. And the hard mode is a book that has been translated within the last 5 years. So for this one, I'm going to read A Magical Girl Retires by Park So-yen and translated by Anton Her. This has actually been on my TBR list, or it's been on specific TBRs multiple times. I keep putting it on readathon TBRs because I know it's really short. I have the audiobook, I think, on Audible, and it's only something like 4 hours, so I don't know why I keep not getting to it, but it also feels quite smart to have a couple of shorter books on the bingo board if I can get them on, to make some of those bigger books that we're going to get into more manageable. So this one sounds so up my alley as someone who used to love magical girl media back in my teenage years. It has a millennial, specifically a millennial, who is exhausted, tired with her job, drowning in credit card debt, and she becomes a magical girl to help fight climate change. This has been translated from Korean in 2022, and it just sounds like something really clever with a trope that is so common and so prevalent. Love magical girls, they're such fun, and I really enjoy seeing them done in a slightly unique way. For the next square, it is the small press or self-published square, and I think that's fairly, you know, self-explanatory. The hard mode is it has to have either less than 100 ratings or be from a marginalized author. So the one I'm picking is Point of Knives. This is book 2 in the Asterant series. Some of them are also by Elisa A. Barnett, but this one is just Melissa Scott. Although it's listed as book 2, I intend on reading them chronologically rather than in publishing order. So this one, even though it's a novella, it's only 154 pages, is next up, which again, like the last book, I think having a couple of novellas on this will really help me. This one has been on a TBR already this year. It definitely came up in one of my Tailspin games. Ideally, I want to continue this series more. I would like to get at least a couple of books from this series read this year. So if I am able to read book 3 or 4, I might switch them onto the board at the very end just to make myself feel like I made more progress. This one does count for the hard mode. It's a second world fantasy that has a guardsman, a kind of swordsman who has once been a soldier, working together with the equivalent of a policeman in a city that hasn't quite got a police force yet. In the first book, they were working together to solve a spate of missing children. And in this one, it looks like they're going to be investigating a series of murders. It feels a little bit like Ellen Kushner's Sword Point series meets something along the lines of The Guards, the Night's Watch, from maybe the later, slightly more serious Terry Pratchett novels. The last square on this row was the one that has taken me the longest. It's the one square where I was actually tempted to use the switcher prompt that we're allowed to do. I think I found something that fits it, but if it doesn't, then this would also fit if I did switch the prompt over to a standalone book. This is The Bone Door by Frances White. It is her second novel. Her first book was The Voyage of the Damned, and that was my favourite book of 2004. So I have very, very high hopes for this one, although it does sound very, very different. This is about Hop, who wakes up in an ancient labyrinth and has no memory of how he got there. I should mention the prompt for this is unusual transportation, and I honestly wasn't entirely sure what counted. It says that the story includes a surprising way of moving from place to place. By unusual, they mean it has to be out of the ordinary, both in real life and within the kind of genre as a whole. The example they specifically give is that faster than light travel wouldn't count, but the Infinite Improbability Drive from Douglas Adams' books would. So I don't know, but this, let's say it would count either for this or for the one I would switch it for. This says that the only way out of the labyrinth is through the Bone Door. And I'm thinking because it's the Bone Door, there's only one of them, so it's fairly unusual in its own world, as well as obviously portal magic being unusual in ours. The hard mode for this is that the transport is not combustion or steam powered. And so again, I don't actually know how these doors work in this book, but I'm guessing it would fill hard mode. The first prompt on the second row is the afterlife, and this is to do anything to do with the realms of the dead. So it can be something maybe more paranormal, like communicating with spirits, or it could be something more portal fantasy with traveling to an actual realm of the dead. The hard mode on this is that the afterlife doesn't have a good place, bad place dichotomy, and I don't know if the book I've picked does, so this might just be an easy mode fill. I've picked Find My Way Down to You by Gillian Winters. It is coming out in August, so I'm gonna have to wait a while to get to it, but it says this is You've Reached Sam meets Hades Town in an enchanting, intoxicating romance across the mortal world and the underworld. I've seen it wrapped up as a retelling of the Orpheus myth, and in this we're gonna have an 18-year-old August who is trying to navigate life after the death of his boyfriend. He travels down to the underworld and ends up falling for, I think, a kind of modernised version of Karen. So it's Greek mythology, queer. I would be eating this up anyway. The next prompt is Game Changer. So this is a book with a trial or a competition, and the hard mode is that the protagonist breaks the rules in some way. This was actually much harder than I thought it would be to fill. I thought I had lots of trial and competition based fantasies on my TBR, but I really couldn't actually think of one. And then someone on Reddit was like, obviously the new dungeon crawler Carl counts for this. And I was like, of course it does. I am not quite at that though. So I was tempted to put A Parade of Horribles, which is book 8 this year. And then I was tempted to put Operation Bounce House, which was his not dungeon crawler Carl release this year, which I do have. But I think what I'm going to do is put This Inevitable Ruin here, because that is the next book I have in the Carl series and I would like to continue it. Ideally, I will be reading this early this year so that I can read A Parade of Horribles relatively close to publication. So Dungeon Crawler Carl or Matt Dinniman in general, something by him is going here. Number 8 is Vacation Spot, somewhere you'd like to visit, and there's no hard mode for this one. It is just pick somewhere you'd like to visit, somewhere that could be cozy or bucket listy, whatever you fancy. For this, I am picking The Unicorn Hunter by Catherine Arden, purely because this is a historical fantasy based around Anne of Brittany, and I've never been to Brittany and it looks beautiful. So I don't think she's having a great time in the period that this book is set, but that's not my problem. With her country's future and her own life at stake, an orphan duchess must journey into the world of myth and discover a power that may be her salvation or her demise. I know Catherine Arden writes beautiful books, and I loved how much of her knowledge and research you could really feel in the Winternight trilogy. I am really hoping and expecting for the same in this one, and it's probably my most anticipated book coming out in June. Then we have the kind of recurring 5 short stories square. This is the one I always really struggle with because I don't really like short stories, but for this year I thought just embrace it and actually pick one book, one anthology or one author's work for this and actually have it be something I can tick off rather than scrambling to find 5 specific separate short stories. The hard mode is to read an entire anthology or collection with at least 5 in it, obviously, and so this would hit that. This is Buried Deep and Other Stories by Naomi Novik. It is 13 short stories that include stories from some of her existing world, like the Scholomance world, I think something from her Dragons books, but also just stories that are on their own. I really, really loved Summer War. I was so impressed with how much world building, how much character she managed to pack into that novella, that I think she might be someone that writes short stories that I could actually get behind. Last book on this row, we have the older protagonist square. So in this prompt, our protagonist has to be someone who is over 50 years old, and the hard mode is that they're not old because they are a vampire or a wizard that has an extended life force. They are just genuinely a person that is older. I think this would fit hard mode because although our character's a witch, it doesn't seem to be that she has a particularly expanded life force. I don't have a specific age on her from the blurb so far, but a lot of the comments refer to her as like a hag or a crone, so I'm assuming she is going to be over 50, and obviously I'll just need to double check that once I read the book. This is The Somewhat Wicked Witch of Brigandale by C.M. Wagner. I've enjoyed Wagner's books before. I really liked her Lady's Guide to Ruthless Wizardry, it might have been called. This one is a practical witch must sabotage her beloved son's ascension to the throne in order to keep the kingdom from ruin. It is pitched as a cozy fantasy. It definitely looks like it's going to have those vibes from the cover. I love when we get female characters who are very, very pragmatic, very practical. But I really like the idea that her goal is going to be to kind of prevent something rather than to get something to happen. In the blurb, it also talks about confusion and chaos reigning, and scheming courtiers are using Bradley for their own end, which I'm assuming then means we're going to get some kind of political scheming, which is my favourite type of fantasy. And then it says, Grizella sets off to bring about the downfall of her darling son. So I'm guessing, again, there's going to be maybe a bit of humour to the way this is written. It is on the slimmer side, it's about 220 odd pages. So again, something just to break up some of the bigger books. On the third row, we start with Duology Part 1. And this is to read the first book in a duology. Hard mode is for this to be an author that you haven't read from before. And I'll be hitting both of those with Gog Magog by Jeff Noon and Steve Beard. This is the first in the Chronicles of Ludwig. It's a science fiction fantasy. It's listed as weird fiction and high fantasy. I have been meaning to try it for absolutely ages. In a distant, tattered future, an old woman, a young girl and a mechanical man embark on a slow voyage in the shadow of the great dragon Haknar up the vast estuary towards the city of Ludwig. This talks about having a character called Katie who is 1,600 years old and is looking for her youth again. So this actually would definitely, maybe, fit for at least easy mode on the older protagonist square. And I suppose if the somewhat Wicked Witch of Brigandale doesn't end up fitting if she is under 50, then I could sub this in there. But this is for now. The next prompt on the board is the, again, recurring one to read a book from any of the R Fantasy book club books or read along books. The hard mode is to participate in the current selection and take part in the discussion. I won't be doing the hard mode, but there were quite a lot of options in their past Goodreads list to go through. The one I have picked for this square is actually In Other Lands by Sarah Rees Brennan. There were a couple of other ones that have ended up scattered throughout this bingo board, but this one is the one that officially fills the prompt. As far as I understand it, this is either young adult or middle grade that is doing a combination of the magical school trope and turning portal fantasy somehow on its head. It sounds like it's going to be really fun, it seems like it's going to be really cute. Published in 2026 is fairly self-explanatory. There are lots of books on this board that would fit. There are lots of books in general that I could have picked. The hard mode is that it has to be the author's first book. I just decided to pick one that I am super excited to read and didn't fit anywhere else on the board, or that doubled up with other things I had on the board. This is Mortadant's Peril by R.J. Barker. It is a fantasy mystery, which is my absolute favourite genre blend. And this one is set in a city of ancient autonoma, strange spirits and sleeping gods. A cleric of death finds his own life on the line in this vividly imagined fantasy murder mystery. In this we have Irodi, who is the Mortadant, and that's a cleric tasked with reading the last thoughts of the dead. When his own assistant is found murdered, he is the prime suspect and he has to investigate what has happened in this city. Seems like a book where the actual setting is going to be a hugely important part, where the city is really going to become a character all on its own, and I'm just really loving the current trend, the current style of fantasy murder mystery genre blend mashups. Then we have Explorers and Rangers. So the character either has to be an explorer, a character who travels to and investigates an unfamiliar region, or a ranger, a wilderness or forest orientated warrior frequently specialising in things like stealth, bows, tracking and other hunting related skills. Hard mode is the explorer or ranger has an animal companion. This one is maybe slightly further out there than the other prompts in terms of how closely I've filled it, but I think it counts. It wouldn't fill hard mode, but it is Heaven's Graveyard by Grace Curtis. This is a science fantasy take on history and myth, magic and mystery. It is following an archaeologist as she chases down rumours about a god when she finds the ruins of an enchanted city still slumbering in sleep. Now, to me, the explorer works well with her being an archaeologist. Archaeologists are obviously usually exploring new locations and exploring the past. The city that our archaeologist is going to be investigating, again, I think counts as explorer. It's maybe not as perfect a matchup, but I do think it counts, and it's a book I really want to read. So this is a sinister lesbian history mystery bringing old magic into a dangerous new century. It has 2 stunning covers and I'm really excited about it, so this is what I'm going to pick. If you don't think it counts, then let me know. Then the last prompt on the board is Duology Part 2. Read the second book in a duology. It's the one time on the board where you're allowed to double up an author. You are allowed to pick the second book from Duology Part 1. And now I could do that quite easily, but that assumes that I enjoy that book, and I don't know that I will. So it feels smarter here to actually do hard mode, which is to finish a different duology than you started in that one, and finish a duology that I already have on the go and I know that I absolutely loved the first book of and have been meaning to get back to for months. Antlered King, the second book in the Ravens Trade duology by Marianne Gordon. The first book was The Gilded Crown. We followed a necromancer who is brought into the Queen's care when her granddaughter is assassinated so that she can revive her. In the capital city, she sort of becomes a pet of the royal family, being used to revive the princess again and again. There's a lot of religious uproar and turmoil in the story. There's looking at how you're valued, whether for yourself or your skill set. some toxic sapphic relationship things going on with it. I had a fantastic time. I especially enjoyed that old religion, new religion dynamic, and I'm really excited to see how the story kind of closes up. I personally enjoyed The Gilded Crown as a standalone, and we kind of ended in quite a different place with our character really expanding the world. If I end up loving Gog Magog, I can always read the second book for that for something else. On row 4, the first prompt is to read a one-word title, and the hard mode is it is not a prompt, and the hard mode is not a proper noun, so no names of places or people. The book I've picked is Bromantasy by Mare Roche. This is such a cute cover. It looks like such a book of just like queer joy. The tagline is 2 heroes, 1 brain cell, which sounds like it'll be absolutely hysterical. It's a cozy queer fantasy about the mortifying ordeal of being known by your totally platonic best friend and the epic quest that might force you to confront the truth. This just sounds like such fun. It sounds so just cheerful, and I just think it's going to be really, really good. Okay. Then we have a book with a non-human protagonist, and the hard mode is that there are no human POVs in the story. The book that I have just started is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. Now I am only about 100 pages in, so I can't guarantee that this fits. Again, if you don't think it does, do let me know. But as far as I can tell, it does. As far as I can tell, our protagonists, and I think the world in general, are all elves, not humans. And so far I haven't seen any indication that humans even exist in this world. So I think it should fit. The next prompt is to read a middle grade. The hard mode is that the author is entirely new to you, and I'm not going to be doing that because I'm going to be reading the second book in Kelly Armstrong's Royal Guide to Monster Slaying series. This one is The Griffin's Lair. We had a princess and prince whose roles in the kingdom are predetermined. The prince has to go off and fight monsters, the princess has to sit and rule the realm, and they kind of swap places, and she goes off to hunt monsters and they have a bit of an adventure, and she gets kind of lots of animal protagonists along the way. I'm actually interested in reading all 4 books in the quartet if I keep enjoying them, but I did restrain myself and only bought the first 2 at the same time, so this one will decide whether or not I want to buy the next 2 books. In this we're following Rowan, who is now the royal monster hunter, and her twin brother Reed, who is destined to be king, but her mother's cousin is still determined that his children will be the ones to inherit the titles, and will stop at nothing to show that Rowan and Reed are too immature to properly lead. In this one, Rowan becomes the caregiver of a baby griffin, and they're going to have to go on a journey into kind of the wilderness in order to release her back into the wild. Then we have First Contact. The prompt is that a story prominently features interspecies or interracial meeting for the first time. The hard mode is it's a non-violent first contact. The book that I've picked here has been on my TBR for a little while. It is The Fourth Consort by Edward Ashton. I actually have Edward Ashton's newest release, After the Fall, on my TBR for this month, so I'm really hoping that I'm going to read that, love it, and want to dive into Ashton's back catalogue. If I read it and hate it, that does present a problem. I'm not a big sci-fi reader, but this one has lots of elements that I tend to enjoy in fantasy, just put in a sci-fi setting, so I think that could be the bridge that I need. In this we're following Dalton Greaves. He's humanity's first representatives to unity, a pan-species confederation working to bring all sentient life into a single benevolent brotherhood. I think this one sounds like it's going to have elements of a political arranged marriage storyline, which I absolutely love. But the description is that it is part First Contact story, so it fits perfectly, part dark comedy and part bizarre love triangle. I always love an arranged marriage kind of storyline trope, and this sounds like it'll do that, just in a more sci-fi setting, so fingers crossed. Then the last prompt on this row is Murder Mystery. The main plot of the story focuses on solving a murder. The hard mode is that the main character is not a detective or private investigator. Did I not tell you that the prompts this year just spoke to me? They were so perfect. This one specifically, and then the next line, I could not have asked for prompts that more fitted my reading style. So, a fantasy murder mystery. There were quite a lot I could have put on here because I gather them to my TBR like candy. The one I've picked is one that B, at Just Be Weird, was talking about, The Tower of the Tyrant by J.T. Greathouse. I haven't seen anyone else mention this, but she seemed to be really convinced it was going to be a good one. So I added my TBR on that basis. The blurb sounds really up my alley. It says, "A land divided, a history inked in blood, one sorceress's quest for answers." A fantasy epic of breathtaking scope, this is a rich standalone adventure for fans of Geralt and Ciri in The Witcher, or those who love the mystery of the Tainted Cup and the Raven Scholar, or for anyone looking to recapture the magic of the Wheel of Time. So it's hitting an awful lot of things in that kind of comp title list. If it can do all of those, I'll be really, really impressed. On the last row, the first prompt is Cat Squasher, read a book over 500 pages in length. And the hard mode is over 900 and I'm not doing that. So we're definitely going for easy mode here. There are then a number of books that fit that kind of 500 to 700 kind of bracket on my TBR, I would say. So I've decided to be smart and put another one from this month's TBR onto it in the hope that it's going to push me to get to it early and not leave me with a 500 page book this time next year trying to fill it in the last couple of days of March. The Mask of Mirrors by Emmy Carrick is the first book in the Rook and Rose series. I've talked about this in my TBR for March, but I cannot even count the number of times that this has been on a specific month's TBR and I've not got to it. I think partly there is a bit of intimidation around the length. It is in that kind of 630 bracket, but also I just think I've hyped it so much in my head that that is the perfect fantasy novel for me that I'm a bit scared it's not gonna live up to it. But Faye has said she will bully me if I don't read it, so I really want to get to it. Ideally, I'm gonna love it and I'm gonna want to continue with the trilogy, maybe not immediately, but this year. And again, kind of like with the Point of Knives, if I end up reading on in the series, then when it comes time to wrap up, I will substitute this with whichever book in the series I've got up to, just to show progress. We're following Ren, who is a con artist. She's trying to work her way into the kind of aristocrats, the elite, in order to provide for herself and her sister. I think it's going to have quite a lot of kind of courtly intrigue and politics. That definitely ticks a box for me. Next prompt is Feast Your Eyes on This. Food or a meal is significant to the story's plot, and the hard mode is to attempt making a dish for yourself. Now, when I tell you I am the world's worst cook, worst baker, do not do it. Believe me. So I'm not going to be attempting hard mode here. I'm going to stick to easy mode. And the one that I have picked is All We Hunger For by Anna Mercier. This is a young woman sneaks her way into a magical baking contest but gets pulled into an elusive aristocrat's lavish world and his nefarious plans as a rebellion brews in the city. So political fantasy, intrigue, as well as a competition aspect and food. It's doing a lot, but if it pulls it off, it'll be a really good one. Then we have Published in the 70s. And although I'm not super happy about it coming up, I am super happy that I guessed it would come up. I said in my wrap up from last year, we done 80s last year, I thought we would do 70s this year. So I have already had a look for this one. I didn't think I was going to find anything, but I actually even have a book on my shelf that fits. And it fits hard mode, which is to read a female author. So it's perfect. The Forgotten Beasts of Eld by Patricia A. McKipp. I don't think I've read anything by McKipp before, but I know she's kind of a classic in the genre. Sybil discovers that the world of man and magic is full of love and deceit and the possibility of more power than she can imagine. The penultimate prompt is Politics and Court Intrigue. Did I not tell you that the prompts this year, chef's kiss. Politics are central to the story's plot. This covers everything from royalty, elections and wars to smaller local politics. The hard mode is there is prominent focus on politics at a city level or lower. I have some books on my TBR that would fit the hard mode, but a lot of them are shorter and I have a book that I really, really want to read. So I don't think this would fit hard mode. It is about a duchess, so it's not maybe necessarily as big as Kingdoms, but it's probably bigger than hard mode. This is The Farm Girl's Guide to Ruling as a Bloodthirsty Tyrant by Katie Nyquist. It is the second in her Scandals of the Gifted series, which are kind of standalone, interconnected world. When Bora swaps bodies with a homicidal duchess, the sweet-tempered wallflower must embrace her inner villainess to survive and save her country. So probably not hard mode, but I absolutely adored The Holy Maiden's Guide to Getting Kidnapped, and I will push that book at absolutely anyone who is interested. It is such a good little political fantasy that like doesn't really focus on the politics. It is pacey, it is action-packed, but I loved the way it really showed political kind of machinations from two different women in two very different ways as both being completely valid in their own rights. I had a brilliant time with that book, and I'm really excited to continue this series. I had this on my TBR, was really excited about it coming out, and then somehow it never really seemed to get any hype, and I totally missed its launch. But when it arrives, I will have my greedy little hands all over it, and then I have an arc of the third one. So hopefully again, I'll be reading the full series or catching up the series kind of within the prompt. Then the last prompt is an author of colour. Self-explanatory. The hard mode is that the author does not live in the UK, US, Canada, Australia or New Zealand. I don't know where this author lives, so I'm happy just to take it as easy mode, but I will be reading The Poet Empress by Chantal. I've heard so many good things, all the good things. I don't think I've seen a single bad review of this book, and it's been everywhere. It is a debut, sweeping, epic and intimate fantasy for fans of The Serpent and the Wings of Night, The Song of Achilles and She Who Became the Sun. So banger comp titles. In the waning years of the Azalea dynasty, the emperor is dying, the land is consumed by famine, and poetry magic lost all except the most powerful. We have a protagonist that offers herself as a concubine to the cruel heir of the beautiful and brutal Azalea house. And all of that, the politics, the intrigue, women as kind of concubines using that sort of political intrigue machinations, so perfect. This was the one book that even before the bingo board dropped, I was like, I'm getting it on there somewhere. I have this gorgeous US edition. I had to get it imported, but I was having it for my shelf. So I'm so excited to read this one. I have, since it came out in January, and okay, it did take a while to get to me, I have started to put it in that like rainy day mental spot where I'm a little bit like, I need to wait for the perfect time to read it. And I don't want it to get stuck there. So I think putting it on the Our Fantasy board is really going to help me make sure that I don't kind of over pedestal it, and I make sure that I do read it this year. I really hope that you have got something from this video, whether it's just for interest or whether you're going to do the Our Fantasy bingo yourself and you are looking for some ideas. If you have any thoughts on any of the books that I've mentioned, whether it's that you don't think they fit the prompt that I think it does, or you just want to share the fact that you're doing the Our Fantasy bingo, let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to be corrected if I've been wrong about something, and I would love to meet other people doing the bingo so that I can go check out your TBR and maybe get some backup ideas to go on my own. If you don't have anything in particular you want to say, then just leave me again some kind of fantasy emoji. Thank you for watching, and I really hope that I'm going to see you in the next video.